Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh my God, it's Valentine's Day.
Oh, it is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Welcome. Who's gonna do it? Meow meow.
Welcome to the podcast. I think I've been designated because I've got the cat on the back of my chair. Welcome to the
Floating.
podcast, everybody. It's wonderful to have you here with us. It is still an unnamed podcast, but today we want to spend a little bit of time talking about branding, which is something that you have come to us time and again and asked us about when to start, what is branding, how can you get out there in small ways and large ways, that kind of thing. So what we're going to do, everybody, is we're going to talk amongst ourselves a little bit. Make sure you have some questions ready to go for us. We're going to spend the first 15 minutes to half an hour just kind of having a coffee talk amongst the selves. And then we're going to go ahead and open it up to any questions you have as well. And as always, of course, we're going to be, unlike my classes, we're going to be sticking to a strict hour here. So
we have
lots
an
of
hour.
delay on my video, Darcy. Really?
Slight
Slight?
on your video to voice, even through
Oh.
us.
Oh, all right. Well,
It's not terrible.
it's not terrible.
I don't
All
know
right.
if it's
I might
quick
have a
fix or
delay
not.
too. Who knows? I haven't been
How's it
talking at
on?
all. Just said hi.
I was gonna say, how is it? Oh, microseconds, Bear. So just enough to be noticeable, right? Just enough to make it look like a kung fu movie. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Oh my God. All right. So, who wants to begin though? Who wants to open up?
Branding. Well, let's walk right into what we were talking about with how branding is not only about a logo,
Yeah.
right? It's not just
Yeah.
about your logo and your front facing appearance. It's also just what you're about and what your brand is about, and building that so that not only visually but people know what to expect from you across all platforms, or if you ever move, or if you don't only stream on Twitch, or if
Yeah.
you stream, like no matter where you are, people recognize your brand and can expect the same thing across all spots. Niche.
Right. It's more than just a logo.
Oh yeah.
What
Oh,
entails
absolutely.
everything about you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
so
it-
for like Spooo, with the way you do your emotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a brand that you've been building for, years, since I've known you. And you've iterated on it, and you continue to iterate on it, and you have your rotation, and you involve your community in it. And that's massive. That's like a
Yeah,
massive.
just having the face out there, everything too, and the people who helped me build the emotes, because I wouldn't have, and they're part of the community, so I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for them. So yes, the many faces of Spooo. Even though it all started out with one face, which is the original Gasm emote, and then we just started editing that into a bunch of different emotes. I don't even know how that started happening, but it's just that's what happens when you hang out with people and ideas just flow back and forth. It's madness.
Well, that goes back to something that we've talked about before, which is you really like so many people, and it's very premature. Like so many people, and I made the same mistake. They hit the ground, and they hit the ground running, and they think that they need to establish their brand right away because we listen to, like, especially if you're listening to advice from like bigger names and larger streamers and all that, they're all like, oh yeah, it's all about my branding, it's all about my personal brand and all that, and you feel like you have to have one right away. And in reality, and I don't know if the two of you have had a different experience with this, but in my experience, when I started streaming, I had no idea what my brand was. I had absolutely no clue. It's I know I've talked about it before, but it took me 2 years to finally figure out what my personal brand was going to be. Just now we're coming around to the whole plur branding and everything. And a lot of, like, along the lines of what Spooo was talking about, your community guides you along the way. And when your community is guiding you along the way, if you let that happen, your branding kind of naturally forms on its own. And that's I think that's a more organic and actually more beautiful way to do it, because now it's formed not just around you or what you intended. It's also formed around your community,
Right. And what you've
and
been
that's
building.
and that way now
It's
your
like they're
entire
part of it as
community is
well,
happy.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the unlock of like finding yourself along that path too, right? Is like
Mhm.
that's why you don't need to find your brand right away, is because you don't even know kind of like how you're going to mesh with the platform that you're trying to mesh with, right? And
Oh
then once you
yeah.
find that, then everything kind of falls into place and gets easier as you understand who you are and what you're trying to give, and then you can layer on that a lot easier.
True, it's like a self-discovery thing too, because you're only going to allow so much in your channel based on what you like and what you don't like, and that's going to help grow your community based around the things you like, and then help evolve that brand eventually. Because when I first started streaming, I mean, this was 4 years ago now, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just wore a hat from an old costume and played League of Legends, and people started coming in and liking the hat that I was wearing, so I got a second one, and then I just started getting a bunch of hats and wearing them, and then I don't really do the hat thing anymore, but sometimes I do, so it's a fun thing to do every once in a while. But that's kind of how I started out, with just some little silly gimmick like that. And I asked people, once I grew to however many hats I had, I asked people what their favorite animal was, and I tried to see if maybe I had something close to that favorite animal that I had. And it was just I don't know. It's funny the way things evolve over the
Right.
years.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to like let the time pass so that you can build what you're building, right? And you understand what you're building. Because we all walk into something new with one notion, but then as you walk through it, everything starts to make sense, and you're like, oh, it's different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason I started getting more hats was because of the community saying they liked it. They're like, "Oh, that's I would get so many comments about my hat." So I was like, "Well, I guess I should get another one." See what happens with the second one.
Right. It's like our sunglasses last week.
Yeah. I don't know where my sunglasses are.
Where's the sunglasses?
Sunglasses. Yeah, exactly.
Where'd you go? What are we looking at?
Hey, look at that.
Interesting.
Hang on 1 second. Hang on. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Hang on.
Just experiencing something.
Yeah. What the heck happened? Why did it do that all of a sudden? That's really weird.
So Standard's gonna stream from an angle from now
I'm gonna
on.
stream from an angle from now on.
Yeah. Standard
Oh,
side
man.
cam.
So I guess bottom line is what your brand should be. It should bring value to you. It should be something that
You believe in.
you believe in.
Oh,
For sure.
totally. Because if you can't stand in front of it, then how can you expect others to, right?
Right.
That's always a challenge. It's a simple challenge. Standard's working on some stuff. Don't worry. He'll be back.
Hey, Bullets, man.
What up? So good.
So let's talk about your branding, Pixel.
Yeah, I mean, like that's from a company perspective, and I wanted to build, like, I wanted to have the name of the company obviously first before I started, putting everything out there. And when we formed the company, I wanted to make sure I had a name, because like I did a comic book shop back in the day, and I didn't have the names figured out before, and that was just hell to like try and switch everything. And so I wanted to, with Pixel, I wanted to make sure that I had the brand built prior, at least the visual and the logo and everything and the intent prior to starting, kind of, and then walk into it, just for the sake of simplicity and like setting up the construct, right? Like websites and all that stuff, and making sure everything was in place. So that's why I named it early. Normally, you want to just fall into that for like a personal brand, right? If you're going to build anything around yourself,
Well,
you can let that come.
Huge.
Yeah. So I definitely just grew into it. And even the logo has evolved a little bit over time as I kind of learned more about myself. And we ran into challenges. I also had a professional break down the brand when we first got started with marbles and give me a little report on it. And it was interesting. It was like stuff about being the same on all platforms, like ensuring that even your logo placement and the background that it's on and the logo itself is the same. Because on a bunch of different platforms, I would have like an old logo here, and then on Twitch it was my new logo, on Discord it was this logo. And so like even just that simplicity of like clean up your logo structure and make sure you look the same on all platforms, and then people can see you. Yeah, and then the tag, right? But I can't get a longer tag, so that's obviously why I'm Stu on two of the platforms. People like come into the stream sometimes, they're like, "Hey Stu, what's going on?" I'm like, really?
Well, it makes it easier when we're trying to tag you across multiple platforms, though, you know?
I might as well just call myself Stu from now on.
Oh my God.
Pixel by pixel. Hey, I'm Stu. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great.
But that's a really good point, right? Because like obviously we're studios, but on other platforms we're STU, so people perceive that as Stu. And so now on Twitter and Instagram I'm forever Stu.
Right.
You know?
I am Pixel by Pixel Stu.
It goes to show you, you know, how important that is.
Yep. And now, I'm Stuart from Pixel by Pixel Studios.
Yeah. No, being, you know, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera, but, you know, one point that needs to be made too is, you know, again, like what is being taught now is you want to make sure that if you're a company or you're tied into a team, that you've got your own logo and special branding done. And if you're running solo, you know, like for your own personal branding, it should be a picture of you so that you are recognizable. You were talking about, you know, like making sure things are consistent across all of social media. I've changed up like my avatars and all that so much now that I have a checklist of everything. Like if I decide I don't like the angle of my face that day on social media and I decide I want to change it across everything, then I have a checklist, like make sure I hit Facebook, Instagram, you know, of course we start with Twitch and then, you know, and YouTube and everything, and just boom, 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 and make sure that I hit it all the way across. I have all the sizes for the different banners for the different social media saved, so that when I'm, you know, hanging out in Photoshop and I'm changing everything around, I resize things on the fly and then I plaster it at once, you know, and do it all at one shot. That's consistency across there is really important.
Right.
Something as simple as a different picture of you will sometimes throw people off.
Totally.
As I've learned. So it's like the people would go into Steam where my picture is different and they're like, "Is that you?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Well, even if it's an old picture of you, right? Because like we all change over time, we look different. Whatever happens, and if you don't look the same, and people are looking at the profile picture and like, oh, you know, is this the same person?
Yeah, like all my short hair stuff I have to fix. I have all these year-old things that I have to change because I have long hair now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Not sure if this, normally I wouldn't look at chat at this moment, but not sure if you brought this up, but what was the event which you had all come up with your current names? And I think that's a great question to answer in the middle of, General Wackass asked that, and I think it's a great question to ask in the middle of this context. Like, did any of us truly choose our names out of branding, or is it something that we carried forward? And I want to bring this into the conversation because I love Spoo's explanation of where his name came from. So
it's magnificent.
Yeah, mine just happened over time. It was a big oops, as some people would say. It's just oops backwards. But no, originally it was from a character called Spaghetti from Inspirational Guys. If you know Tim and Eric from Tim and Eric Awesome Show, they are a reason for a lot of my weird humor that I have. But there's a character called Spaghetti, and so originally I was Spaghetti for a while, and I played video games with a French guy, and he pronounced it Spouget. So one day I just changed it to Spoojet because I was playing with this guy all the time. It just made sense. So I was Spoojet. And then I was streaming on Twitch for a while and realized I could change my name and just decided one day to drop the Jet. I had already been streaming for 2, maybe 3 years. And then this was right before Marbles, basically. I just decided to drop the Jet. I don't know why. It was just cleaner and I could do it. So I did it. But everybody's favorite part of the story is I was Spoojet on League of Legends and I was reported for having an offensive name. And Riot decided to give me my own name. I didn't have a choice in the matter. One day I just logged in and said, "You're reported for having an offensive name. Your new name is now Glorious Spray."
Yeah. That's the story I was waiting for. That's
so good. Right, it's so good.
It's like who was the person who decided that Spoojet was offensive, so offensive? You know what? I've got a better name. Let's go with Glorious Spray. You know what? I would have just run with it. I'm like,
maybe they just pulled up a thesaurus.
Maybe.
when automation goes wrong, you know, it's like some bot script looked at that and went, you know what, I can give it a better name.
Yeah, and then I think it was Darcy that brought it up when I told the story one time. She said, because she said how many times its Glorious Spray get reported, and if it did get reported for being offensive, then maybe Riot saw that it was a Riot changed name, so they couldn't change it because they already changed it, and if they changed it again, I don't know.
then it's a hit against their system.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we can't change it because that means we gave him an offensive name.
It's true. Yeah. No, that's so amazing.
That's the story of Spooo.
Oh God, I love that story. I can hear it a million times and it just doesn't get old every single time.
What about your Standard?
Well, it was Spoojet tier, and then Riot changed it to Glorious Spray. But when I started Twitch, I was Spoojet again.
My story was mine's really simple. Like mine came from it's a little known PC game called Obsidian. It was done by Sega Soft back 1999 2000, right in that era. But right near the beginning of the game, I actually turned it into a redeemable on my channel. You can play it. Right at the beginning, there's a document you have to find called StandardDamage, and the name just stuck with me. Like I was in that teenage phase where I was always like changing my username every once in a while. Like I couldn't settle that kind of thing, and it just the name of it struck me so funny. I was like, I'm like, there is no such thing as a standard level of damage. Now, if you look up StandardDamage. You know, now it's, you know, they use it in WoW, they use it in Dungeons and Dragons, they use it in all kinds of stuff. Like there's a standard level of damage for things. But at the time, it wasn't a common term. And I just thought it was hilarious because there is no such thing as a standard level of damage to me. It doesn't really exist. And it just stuck. It just stuck. I've used it on everything from music projects to the YouTube channel to here, and by the time I really got going on Twitch, it was, you know, to me it was unique. It was something that I didn't have to put 15 ones after,
right?
You know, that kind of thing, and you know, so I just kind of rolled with it from there. I mean, and it's just who I've been all this time. What's interesting now is I've been StandardDamage for so long. The people that I was on gaming forums with like a decade ago, will come search me out.
Oh,
I
wow.
had a couple people come search me out from the YouTube channel. Like, are you the same StandardDamage? Do you still do those voices? And it's like, yeah, I use them differently now, but yeah, I still do. So it's having that, you know, having had just that consistent name. I wouldn't even call it branding because Twitch is the first thing for me that really took off and gained a little bit of notoriety. But
but it's powerful.
Like,
that's a very good sign. Yeah.
If you're a young person, you know,
friends and old friends and all that will still come search you out based on that username. So
no, it shows the power of branding, even at like at the simple level of like just the same name. That's so crazy.
So yeah, but there's no glorious story behind my username. I just saw it in a video game, thought it was really funny, decided I would hang on to it, and the fact that it does fit my personality just works.
Yeah.
So I've probably had that username now for 2 decades actually. So
That's crazy.
yeah.
It's so long.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I came up with Pixel by Pixel just kind of like, I like the idea of building Pixel by Pixel. I also like the word pixel, I think, a lot.
Just,
But it's actually funny because I don't think I've ever defined myself as Pixel. It just happened. And I just think that's a funny residual effect of the naming, I guess. And me not really defining a name for myself. I would never, like, even on stream when I first started, I still to this day, I don't really introduce myself. I don't know why. I'm just a guy. I'm just the dude. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's I've actually gotten to the point now, like for the longest time I've always explained to people that the reason I separate myself from Standard Damage is the project, and I'm Jamie, and I've recently gotten to the point where I'm just done fighting it, because no matter where I go or what I do, just like people call you Pixel all the time, I get Stan and Standard and Damage. I get the shortened version of it, and it's like, you know what? It's who I am. That's fine. That's fine. And I think that was actually a mistake I was making, was kind of separating myself
from the project,
from the branding. I think that was a bad idea, and that's something that I wouldn't recommend others to do, would be to separate themselves from that. It's kind of like, it goes back to like letting your community help you form who you are. Like if they're comfortable with you being Spooo or Pixel or Standard, then
Maybe it felt like you were kind of fighting it a little bit, and if you feel yourself doing that, you just gotta let it happen. Name's not that big of a deal. If people want to call you by a certain name, let them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I agree. That's exactly how it was feeling for me. Is like,
as long as it's part of the brand, not like a name you're making making fun of you or something like
that. No, totally.
But, yeah.
And then it also, like, it comes into the whole talk of like how Rec's saying his friends call him Rec. I mean, I think that falls into our culture even now, with us always being online, right? So much happens online in our lives, so we're always under a screen name most of the time, right? Obviously, if you're your first and last name on every platform, then that's a whole different story, but most of us aren't. And to be relevant across all the platforms, and then with your friends, how it translates to life, and then your friends call you by those names as well, because everybody's living on this online ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to build that personal brand, because you can be powerful if you want to be relevant across decades, right? In the coming decades in the future. It's like, if you want to be relevant, you're going to have a brand that sticks across, because in 10 years, it's not going to be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It might be still, like, you never know, there might still be there, but I think there's always going to be a rotation of platforms that are relevant at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And that the main focus is on. And for you to remain relevant, you have to build that brand around something that can be applied to all these platforms going forward and remain in the front of the minds, right?
Yeah.
Truth.
It's crazy. It's I mean, like, I'm always learning about it as well. It's like never ending, the amount of information you can consume about just branding itself, and how, like, the strategies, and there's multiple strategies, and people have different opinions about it, right? And obviously some people have data to back what they've tried, and some people don't, and we all have our own opinions about it. It's just important to keep trying is the key here, right? Is just keep pushing forward, trying to apply your brand and keep building it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's really important too to bring up that the place to start, like, as far as like letting your personality form and all that, and it's an important trap not to fall into, and we bring this up all the time, is make sure that you're not out there being negative. while your brand is forming, while people are starting to get a sense of your personality, if you put yourself out there as negative, complaining, anything like that, that's going to be part of what your persona becomes. There are people out there right now that wish they could take back things they said 5 years ago, because it's part of what their branding formed around. There was some negative comment, they slipped and made a mistake and yelled at the wrong person, whatever it was. They wish that they could make that go away, because that kind of stuff can stick with you for a very long time.
For sure.
So if you're looking for a starting point as to where your branding should begin, you really should start out with, keep it simple, make sure that you're being positive, make sure that you're being caring, make sure that you're being friendly. Those are the things that you want as as part of your base.
Well, you got to be true to what you're building, right? And
yeah,
positivity, yes, like it's a point. It's something that I believe helps growth. But I also think there's communities out there that thrive on not necessarily negativity, but drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's your brand, if that's what you choose, if that's the path you choose to walk, then commit to that's what you're doing. But I totally resonate like with what you're saying there, Jamie. Is like, you got to be careful with what you're saying, and if it's not true to your brand, if it's not something that you believe is going to be applicable to your brand, and you state that under your brand's name, and then a couple years down the road, or even a couple months, you're being challenged because it's like, well, you said this before, and this isn't really what you're preaching now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I think that's also just applicable to like big topics, right? Like everybody's opinion changes over time. We learn new things and apply those thoughts to the old way we used to think. And it's like, oh, maybe I was wrong then, right?
Yeah.
And there's always those cases. So it's just challenging. Because everybody's gonna call you out and be like, oh, well, you said this back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
oh yeah,
opinions change.
Yeah,
as long as you stay true to yourself.
People are always going to dig through that dirt, but yeah. Staying true to yourself is the way to go, for sure.
Yeah,
if you
totally.
feel like I always tell people, if you feel like you're forcing something, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah, totally.
That's not true to yourself anyway. It might not necessarily be wrong, but
yeah, not where you want to be, not where you want you want your brand or your content to be. That's for sure. Just the idea is to just make sure that you avoid the massive stuff. Avoid the massive stuff. Like even beyond expressing opinions, like opinions will change, absolutely, and I totally agree with that. I don't feel the same now as I felt a year ago about a lot of things, but at the same time, just avoid those big nasty missteps. Like, you don't want to be known as the person who was sitting on camera complaining about the fact that they had been streaming for an hour with no subscriptions. That's gonna stick with that along the lines of branding. All right, and I'm not calling anybody out here, but we've seen that happen a number of times now, and that is going to stick with those streamers for a while. People are going to look at them and they're going to go, weren't you the person that was on complaining about the fact that they didn't have any donations or tips or anything like that? And that's not the kind of stuff you want to follow you along the way. So what I'm saying is, like, make sure you free yourself up from that kind of stuff, so that as your brand forms, you don't have to kick extra baggage off while you're trying to become who it is that you really want to be and should be.
Right.
Yeah,
just control what's going on the forward-facing part of the brand, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also, like, this is a big point, is going on these rants, right? If you're looking to work with a brand and maybe you had a bad experience with a different brand and you badmouth them online, then that's going to stick, right?
Studio
and then another brand
sponsor.
who might be looking into you, because we all know, like, something like Twitch looks into all your social when they're looking in to work with you, right? So if they look into your social and see that you crapped on another brand because they did a decision that you didn't agree with or something like that, then that might reflect on future deals you have with future brands. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't take into account, is like, all this stuff comes into play. Everybody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. People don't realize those outside sources are
Yeah.
looked at.
And and as a streamer, you're looking to work with massive brands, and we all know massive brands are very selective of where they put their brand and who they trust their brand with, right? They're not just going to trust anybody with it. If they know that you have a record of, bad mouthing something just because you don't agree with it, then they might choose not to work with you. Now, of course, there's limitations to all this stuff, right? If you're just like dropping an opinion and it's just a kosher opinion, it's very basic, then that's fine. But it's just when you're trashing and you dig in so deep about it, right?
I feel like even when you're dropping an opinion, you should try to make it engaging and positive. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I don't like the way this is and this certain thing, but I want to talk about it with people. Maybe you could enlighten, drop some, if it's a thing on Twitter, drop some comments and try to change my mind, something like that.
Yeah, be constructive, right?
Yeah,
like you're trying to build an idea as opposed to tear something down.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, totally, Twilight. It's all over the place, and I think it's just who we are. Like, humans are humans. We're opinionated, right? And we all have our own way.
You just went mute for me.
I did? What?
Is that just me?
What?
Hello?
I can't hear anybody.
You can't hear anybody? That's just you.
No,
Spooo.
now I'm back.
You're back?
Yeah. What? I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything.
Okay.
I hear
Derek.
everything.
Didn't do nothing.
I didn't do nothing. I swear to God. I totally lost my train of thought.
I'm so sorry.
It's gone. So now you have to continue.
Where were we? My train of thought is gone as well.
Oh, what were we talking about again? We were talking about, let's see, negativity and
well, yeah, like just like
and
what's
building
going on,
ourselves up.
like what you're putting online, right, under your brand,
Right.
and being constructive about most things as opposed to tearing down.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's easy to tear down, right? It's easy to pick apart somebody else's work, and regardless of what it is, it's easy. We all can it's always easy to find those negative points, and it's challenging to find the positive, because I think it's just we as humans find it easy to like look for the points to build on, and this would be good if like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
This would be good if this.
Yeah.
But instead of being like, this is a really good thing about this, imagine if it worked this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's just thinking, and I think it's just the way we communicate, honestly. It's wacky.
Yeah.
It's tough to, it's tough to, I'm trying to think of how I want to put this. It's tough to embrace the add to mentality versus the take away from. And I think it's because of all of the programming that we have, as well as what human nature basically is now. We have to, I've always found it interesting that we actually have to, and like there's, you see it so much, and like I admit I've been through it myself. Like you have to actively change how you're looking at things, how you handle things. Like you said, like it's much more productive to have this conversation where you say, this is great. I think it would be even better if we did this, and like bring that constructive opinion and that constructive criticism to something, as opposed to going, well, you know what, that's just bullshit.
Right.
And that's just it. And I think part of it too, honestly, is because, in a culture where we're all so busy, it's easier to just rip it down. Like if you go constructive, you might have to take an extra breath to explain where you're coming from. When you're being negative, or like I said, you're trying to take away from it, it's just like, no, that was crap. I don't want to do that. I think that's a terrible idea. Put it back the way it was. That's my favorite one. Put it back the way it was.
Right.
And that's probably the wrong thing to do. It's a lot of times it's just, again, it's like you approach it, you go, that was a really cool idea. how is this? You know, what if we tried this, or what if we did that?
Right.
And you know,
Rather
like
than
Mike just said.
Well, I was going to say, if you feel yourself getting emotional over somebody disagreeing with you, then you really need to take a step back and take a breath and just try to work with them. Like you said, try to suggest something else, or, you know, whatever it is. If you are getting over emotional, it's just going to end up looking bad on you, because you're going to end up going to a negative space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. I think Headsnap's comment about language, I really think it's branding. It's what you want to be, right? And my theory on swearing is just it's got to be you. It's got to feel like it's you if you're going to build swearing into what you do and not feel forced. I feel some people, like, it feels really out of place when they swear. Like, I feel like if I swore a lot, it would feel out of place because it's just not who I am. I'm not a big swearer. Even though I was in the military for 10 years, like, I could swear. I've been around it for a long time, but it was just never really my strong suit for the application of it. But if it fits you and it's who you are, and as long as it's not hateful, I think swearing has its place in the world, and you just live with it within your brand, right? But you also got to just take into account that, is it Spooo that you told me this before? Is like nobody's gonna complain if you don't do it, right? But there will be people that complain if you do.
Right. There's some things that work like that, like smoking on stream, cursing on stream, drinking on stream. All this stuff comes into account when you're thinking about, let's say, cursing on stream. Nobody's gonna, like you just said, nobody's gonna leave your stream if you're not cursing. There might be a very few amount of people that's like, this guy's too soft for me, I gotta leave. But people will definitely leave your stream if you're cursing too much, or just cursing in general.
Right. Somebody might have kids around or whatever, right? Like the.
Not that I take a lot of these things into account, but
it's just something to take into account. That's all.
Right, for sure.
And if you understand it and you've made a decision based on it, that's good.
Of them,
yeah, respect. Because that's fine. Like, so many people do that and it works. It fits in perfectly. And as long as that's the case, that's fine.
You know, the funny thing for me is always to me, the beeps are funnier than the word themselves. I'm one of those. It's like, I would rather say it and beep it out and let somebody guess at what I'm saying than actually say the word.
Right.
And it all started out like really became a thing. Like, once I knew who my audience was, and I knew that I had a lot of parents watching with their kids and grandparents watching with their kids and people doing work lurks and all that, then it became truly a responsibility thing. It was, you know, I don't want somebody to have to explain to their kid or their boss why I said something on stream,
right?
And put them in that position. But originally, the original reason I wanted this was because I wanted the comedy. You know, it's because I could say this, that, and you know, and everybody has to guess at what I was saying. It's also great for spoilers, by the way. But it really, like again, it's what is your persona. Like, now, if somebody came into one of my streams and I started just letting the words fly, I don't think they'd know what to do with themselves.
Right.
You know, it's and I've had some people that I can tell are a little uncomfortable with that setup. Because they'll come in and they'll try to, you can always tell they'll try to curse in your chat, and they don't mean anything by it. They're not trolling. They're not trying to get anybody riled up or anything. They'll just say whatever. And when the bot like takes the comment out, it doesn't time them out, but it drops the comment out of there.
Yeah.
Then you can tell there's a little bit of unease. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And it's, you know, but again, it should be all about who you are. Like, if you're, you know, if cursing is part of your culture and your branding and what you want, how you want to put yourself out there, then you should do that.
Yeah,
you should do that, and let your community decide whether or not they want to be there.
Yeah,
you know,
it's at the point where I'm conscious of it, but I have a hard time holding. I don't think I do it too much, but I'm definitely conscious of it when it's happening.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I should probably cool it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's our bringing up, right? It's like what you grew up with. I grew up in a household like where like swearing was a no-no. It was just like, you don't do that. Like we all know the words, but you don't do that. And it's just, and then I go to the military and it's the complete opposite. It's like, we do that.
You better do it too.
So yeah, it's totally like just what you have around you and what you want around you. And respect, like however, as long as you're happy and you're doing what you love, that's really all that matters. You're not hurting anybody.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was the same way, Mike. In my household, around my mother, you did not drop an F-bomb.
Right, yeah.
If you dropped an F-bomb, you were in so much trouble. So much trouble. That was like the word she couldn't handle beyond any other thing you could do. And so
I got smacked a lot.
So it's, you know, again, it's a lot of it's like, you know, and at this point now, like when I do it, like I don't have a problem with language. I really don't. But like you said, Spooo, and I just want to kind of come back to this real quick. You're conscious of it.
Yeah.
And especially when you're broadcasting, then you're really conscious of the things you do while you're broadcasting anyway. But you do become very, very conscious of the things you say and the things you do. So if there's something that in any way might offend somebody's sensibilities out there, there's always that breath before it happens, or right after it happens. You know, it depends on the circumstances, but
you're always analyzing what you're saying, right?
Oh, I just said that. Yeah.
Or could that sound weird?
Like, or chat's analyzing it.
I find the most fun is the names when people follow. Is like I always try to read it first and then sound it out of my head and be like, is this a weird one?
Yeah,
is this one that's gonna come out and sound like something that I'm not supposed to say?
Right.
Because the people get creative.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, there's so many of those names out there too, and you're always on guard.
Right.
You know, you take that breath. There are streamers now who have gotten to the point where they don't even call out their follows anymore because they just never know when the next one is right around the corner. And there are still, no matter how experienced you get, there are still names out there that will get you.
Oh, totally.
That will get you. Yeah.
Yeah. Mics always get me. Damn mics.
Oh, really?
Oh, all the time.
The mic names.
How do you think I feel when Paul comes around during Community Day?
I haven't seen Paul in a while.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
man.
Paul. Just the four letters.
Mm-hmm.
We're across actually 10:30.
Yeah.
If there's any questions in chat, you guys can start dropping them. We'll reflect and bounce off of them if you guys want. Paul is a beast. I know. He's famous.
Somebody asked, they didn't tag me in it though. Let me scroll up here real quick. I think maybe it was Little Gray Alien.
Yeah, the Korean names are hard, but I'm trying. I don't know if you guys are.
Oh, always trying.
I think a lot of people are trying out there, you know, because they have I guess those are the translations next to them, right? Or the best.
I don't know how that works because sometimes
some will tell me that they have a different nickname.
Yeah, it'll be like, oh, it's actually this, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
I wonder if there's like I don't know if there's any other games that have experienced this kind of involvement where like you have people of all different languages and stuff. Like I wonder if there's like a tool we could build in to like help with that. I have no clue.
I always just apologize when I get when I'm calling out top 10s and I get to that name on the list. It's like, I'm sorry I can't make out 4th, or I'm sorry I can't make out 8th. And for the most part, our Korean players have been very understanding. A lot of times they'll laugh, like they'll drop into chat after the fact and laugh, and then I'll call them out because then I can see, I can match the names up.
Right.
But yeah, it's very tricky. I think my favorite one right now, and I kid with him every time I catch him in my stream, is Mandioc's left ball.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the best translation we've got so far is Mandioc's left ball, and I'm really getting to know their names too. I just wish I could recognize them a little bit better in game. You know,
Same,
like Mandioc and Itchy Tom.
Trying to match up a couple of symbols and then remember them.
Yeah.
Try to remember them. where was that? Oh, that question had scrolled back down on me, rats. Little Gray Aliens, a question for you, Standard. With all the drama on YouTube right now with Compa and everything, are you worried about saying something wrong or any kind of copyright strike? Because I know some YouTubers who got in trouble with older videos years back and had to go erase. I'm not worried about a thing. I'm not worried about a thing. I put very little, way, and actually the videos are taken down now anyway, so I don't even have to worry about it. Way back, like I'm talking over a decade ago, like maybe even as much as 14 years ago, I had one video up there that had copyrighted music in it. And I really don't worry about it. And what everybody doesn't understand about everything that's going on with YouTube right now is that there are levels. Like, just because, you know, unless I go to monetize a video, I might have some licensed music in there inadvertently, or there were a couple of times where I did personal videos where I had Star Wars music in there. All that happens is the monetization on that gets taken away from you, and they give it to the person that owns the copyright. And if you're not monetized anyway, who cares? Who cares? That really doesn't matter. Now, watching your step on YouTube, most of the time, every once in a while, because they're trying to automate so much. We talked about this in class last night, actually. They're trying to automate so much that there are some things that are happening to YouTubers right now that are very unfair. Okay, videos that are getting copyright struck, things involving, because you know everything's about the kids right now with all that legislation and everything. So there's all that going on as well. But from a personal standpoint, because of what my content is going to be and where it's going to be directed, I'm not worried about anything. And there's also software that I'm going to be using. I used to use it. I'm going to go back and use it again, where I can create my own, very easily, I can create my own background music, things like that, and it's all copyright free. It's about $100 a year. And what it does is you can actually, it plugs right into Adobe Premiere Pro. You can actually swing it up so it's more dynamic, bring it back so that it stays more background, that kind of thing. So I don't have to worry about any of the copyright issues or anything like that either. The big thing is, I mean, the rule of thumb always is, you just got to make sure you keep it all original. Keep it all original. Don't go throwing other people's properties up there. Like, yeah. I've seen videos get taken down because somebody threw a 2-second clip of SpongeBob up. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I know there's certain arguments about what's fair use and what isn't, but I'm sorry, if you're broadcasting it and you're monetizing it, it's got to be all you.
Yeah.
It's got to be all you. And as long as you follow that basic rule, you're fine. You're fine. Go out there and find the music that isn't copyrighted, and make sure you give them credit if that's all they're asking for. I mean, that's just common courtesy.
Yeah. Well, there's so much out there to help creators nowadays. Like there's not a million, but there's like a bunch of different platforms that you can get music off of. You pay a monthly subscription and you can use any of their music in your videos, and your channels won't get copyright struck. I think that's so important. Is like, nowadays there's no excuse to not create original content. That's your own. There's like just so many sources to get all this stuff that's either you're able to use it commercially, or you have rights, like all that stuff.
Right.
It's one of the ways that I choose to make games as well. It's like there's lots of stuff on the content store, like on the store, that I could buy and use, and that's totally okay. But I want the game to be original. Like, I don't want people to look at the game and go, "Oh, I recognize that piece, from the content store, that I saw a couple weeks back or whatever." So it's just a good practice to be in, definitely in the creator space. And this goes for videos, audio, any type of content you're putting out there. Make it original. Make people go, "Oh, I've never seen that before." Right?
And that'll help develop your brand.
Totally. Swing in full circle.
Yeah, that's what I like about creating original content is the best creativity is creativity under restrictions. When you have a box that you have to stay in, and making sure that you stay within copyright laws is one of those boxes. It's one of those boxes. So when you do that, now you have to think, okay, what music am I going to use? How am I going to structure this? And a lot of times when you have to do things like that, because you're trying to, stay within the boundaries, you'll come up with some new process or some new idea that you probably wouldn't have come up with before if you hadn't had that wall standing in your way.
Yeah. Always freaker on that. Always get written permission, even if it's your friend. Get written permission. Get everything in writing that you're going to do. Definitely if you're taking something that they own and they have commercial rights to. It's something that we do for the custom marbles. Even though, people submit their artwork and stuff, we always make sure that there's a written agreement that they understand that it has to be, they have to have full commercial rights to it and everything.
Yeah.
It's just good practice. Even like if you're working with somebody and you're expecting money, get a contract in place. Always get a contract in place if there's money involved, so that all the details are all laid out cleanly for both parties. It's so important. And even when it's with friends, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to let you finish. Something else that I wanted to throw out there. This was something that was taught to me by another YouTube creator. And they said, be very careful. Even when you get like written permission from somebody to use their music, they still, you can still get struck is what can happen because it's automated. So what'll happen is like, if you've gotten written permission from somebody, but they still have their music in that database, and that database is huge now, it can still come along and silence your video.
Yeah, then you submit the right written permission.
You got to submit the written permission, and then you got to wait that process out and all that. So if you want to stay within growth, if you want to grow and you want to make sure that your video stays out there after you launch it, the best thing to do is to avoid it altogether unless the person you're getting permission with or from doesn't have their music in that system. Then you're good to go. But there's been a few times now where YouTubers actually got major artists to sign off on using their music in a video, and their video got taken down for 2 weeks because it had to go through YouTube's reapproval process.
Right.
Because they had written proof, but it was in the system, and it takes a while before a person actually reviews it. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you might go through a long delay getting your video up there if the music, even with permission, if that music again is in that system.
Yeah. Yeah, Headsnap. Yeah, I've heard of creators actually contacting whatever the source is that handles all that stuff, and just telling them to remove their artwork, their work from that system, because some creators are like, I want people to use my music in their videos. I want them to be free to use it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, you can contact your publisher, and I'm sure there's a process to doing all this.
Yeah. Or there's some services now, like Monster Cat. They don't put their music into YouTube system. They have their own bot that goes around and checks all the videos to see if any of their music is in there.
Right.
And the reason they do that is because if you're one of their gold members, you can use any of their music you want as long as you've registered with your websites with them, which is fine. So they use their own separate system, which I think that's actually a great way to do it, because that way they can control who can use their music and who can't, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Going back to earlier talking about censoring stuff, even the bot avoids saying some names. That's done as a joke, though. That's done as a joke at this point. When you can't even say names like Little Miss Sassy Pants and Samson Glass. That was one of those beautiful mistakes with my bot that I just started running with, and now it's a joke, because now they can't put any. Nobody can put any word with ASS in it, and it immediately censors it, which I think is really funny. And it's just it takes all kinds of words out, and it's become part of the channel culture. And that's one of those things. Sometimes you look at it and you go, that's a mistake, I'm going to fix it. And sometimes when it happens, something happens and it's a mistake, it's so funny.
Happy accidents.
That's a feature.
And it's a feature. Yep. And that's definitely, a happy accident. Exactly. Exactly.
That's crazy. I guess one last thing we could talk about, if there's no questions, is sources for getting your brand set up visually. I guess, like, what are some strategies that you guys have experienced trying to create that visual part of your brand? Do you do it yourself? Do you reach out? Do you work with somebody specific? Like, how do you keep things looking similar?
Out for me personally, outside of, I do all my own design work with the exception of when I need actual art done. I am definitely not an artist. So when I need like an emote or something like that, I will definitely go to an outside sourcing and get that emote done. You know, I would rather than try to struggle myself, because I've done that before. Rather than struggle myself with artwork, I would rather pay somebody, you know, the 25, 50, 75, whatever it is, dollars to actually get it done right, and then I don't have to worry about it at, you know, after the fact. So, but outside of that, like all of my design work, my branding, everything else, that's all me. I do all that because that allows me the flexibility. If I need to change something, I've already got all the Photoshop files. I've already got all the Premiere Pro files. I can just go in there and change it on the fly if I need a different color or something like that. And I also make sure that and this is very important, like the arrangements that I make with these artists when I purchase an email, when I purchase an emote or purchase a logo, anything like that, that I have their permission to change the artwork. So if I need to change the colorization because I'm going to a new channel theme, something like that, the heart emote that's been used to this day, that actually goes all the way back to the Marble King theme, but I had an arrangement with Marcus ahead of time to change the colors of that emote, or change the design of it if I needed to, you know, or the cheer emote that I have, you know, that I've changed the colors on that over time as well.
Right.
But that's as far as I go. For actual artwork, yeah, I got to go to an artist for that. But outside of that, everything else, that's all my design work. So
Yeah, I basically don't do anything artsy myself. I just kind of come up with ideas, and I have a core group of people that I tend to go to for depending on what I want or what I need, or see, or just to ask them if they are capable of doing whatever idea I've come up with. When it comes to my scenes, I build the scenes, but I don't make the art, you know, so yeah, I don't know. I'm just an idea man when it comes down to it. I can't do anything
Right.
Photoshop wise or anything like that. So it's very important for me to have, and they're all part of the community too, which is really great, in my opinion, because they enjoy doing it and watching their work be used in something that they love.
Totally. Yeah, you just gotta like find the way that you like building something, and then commit to that, right? Commit to that idea.
Right.
I mean, I've used the same artist for all my emotes. Once I found him, I just never stopped. I just enjoy the look, and I enjoy keeping things looking similar, at least as close as possible. So for me, it's just about finding the right artist and then just having them do everything.
Yeah, consistency is good. Coming from somebody who's kind of, over time, it's been kind of all over the place, and now I'm slowly evolving it to be somewhat similar across all boards. But yeah, I've kind of been all over the place, just because I do use different people, and I'm always thinking of a new or different idea, so it's tough. But I would suggest having one artist or doing everything yourself, trying to keep it consistent across the board.
Yeah, just double down on your skill sets. If your skill set is ideas, then find somebody to create those ideas. Take the ideas and turn them into something tangible, right?
Right.
It's important, and just know your limitations. Like with programming, I know my math is not strong, so I often lean on Kegstand to like reflect off something that I might be having challenges with. And it's just trying to explain like how versatile that idea is. Like, it doesn't matter what your skill set is. If you believe in it and you enjoy it, double down on it, and then get people around you that can fulfill the rest, whatever you're missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. Everybody, get involved. Yeah. I saw General Wackass ask a question about mods. I think people do it in all different ways with mods for your channel. personally, I just don't put any, like, for our mods, I just don't put any pressure, and I just let them be involved if they'd like to be involved. And yeah, if I were to like be very demanding, I would definitely expect that they'd be paid. But you have your own relationships with your mods. People, some channels, their mods are like their best friends, and they're involved because they want to be involved. And it's just, I mean, like, you guys are probably better off talking to these points as well. Spooo, you've been around the block for a while, and I'm sure you've had many people involved in moderating your channel, right?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've never put pressure on my mods. A lot of the times I would just handle things myself. I've never really had like an enormous channel, you know, so I've always been able to kind of handle it myself with shout outs and things. But anytime a mod does jump in and handle something or shout out, I'm greatly appreciated of it. And they're definitely people I trust. And it's hard to find that in an online person, somebody like that you trust. I'd never be afraid to get rid of a mod if they're crossing the line. 100%.
Right. Yeah, your mods are your like lifeblood of the channel for sure. Right?
Absolutely.
Or talk to them about it. You know, if you want to keep that, you know, pulling somebody aside, don't do it. Don't blast them on channel. Blasting people in public just is not a good thing to do. Always put yourself in a one-on-one situation with someone and talk about it. Man to man, man to woman, whatever you want to call it. Woman to woman, person to person, human to human.
Darcy. I'm sorry, Spooo. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was done.
Comment. I looked over. No, and a lot of it.
No, yeah, and a lot of people, that's part of it for them too. They just want to be a part and be able to help. And that's why I think, going back to the art thing, you know, some people in Spooo Town, I'm blessed that they just want to help. They just want to help and see something grow. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's, you know, and head snap to get on that question as well. Like there are, and I've had conversations with other streamers too. Like, as the channel grows, like, are there other things I'm going to be able to do for my mod team and all that? And a lot of that, again, you know, we're going to say this. I think all three of us are going to chime in on the same thing here, that it's about the demands that you put on your team. Like, if you're going to be very demanding, and I've seen streamers make this mistake, by the way, if you're going to be very demanding on your team, then it's become a job at that point. It's not about when they can come in the channel, when they can hang out and lend you a helping hand. Now it's a job. So you got to make sure that you're taking care of them in certain ways. Like, if you're going to put expectations, like, I expect you to be in the stream, you know, I expect you to be in three of my streams a week for 2 hours a day or whatever, then you have to make sure that there is, you know, that there is some reward, some thank you for that.
Right.
But you know, that comes with a channel of a certain size. Like, you have to, by that point, it becomes more of a business thing. The channel has to be able to support that. And it takes quite a while before you have a channel that can, you know, quite honestly, financially support that. So again, what a lot of streamers do is they it's a privilege. You keep the demands light. Don't be afraid, though, if you find yourself in a situation where you need a little bit of extra mod help, to jump into your Discord or whatever and ask for it.
I was just going to say, if you have,
you know, because there are times when you really need your mods around, or you need them help in keeping an eye on something. There's an event you're doing or something like that. You need some extra troll protection, whatever. You know, don't be afraid to, but make sure you ask them as far in advance as you can, especially if you're doing something outside of your normal schedule. You know, that's a very big deal. But no, the thing to do is keep it light. Like Spooo said, if you have somebody, you know, if you have a mod that's crossing the line, or they're doing things they shouldn't be, don't be afraid to get rid of them, because that ruins the experience literally for everybody and can cause all kinds of problems for your channel if that's the case. But keep it light. And as time goes on, it's something that, you know, when you get to the point where you're able to start taking care of people in other ways, including financially, your team that has been there with you and helping you and all that, they should be darn near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. You know, it's for the little extras and the little goodies and the fun little things you can do for them. So
yeah. And going back to what you said before. There's been plenty of times where it's streams going on, and maybe I got a big raid, or there's trolls that are hard to keep up with, and I just make sure the DMs are ready with your mods. If they're not always around, maybe at least if you're not on DM levels with your mods, I think it's a great thing to have someone that you can just reach out to. I think that's it's a good quality of the mods. And if they're ever really needed in the channel, then boom, just DM them, say, hey, I need you if you're around, and then maybe they'll show up. Just hit them all up, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
Code red, Spootown.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alrighty. So we're at that 1 hour mark, everybody. Again, these go by so fast.
They do.
They do. They do.
All right. Well, let's call it there. We're gonna upload this to YouTube as well. And guys, thanks so much for coming out to this. We love doing this, and
Appreciate you guys.
always.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Yes.
Yeah, and we're gonna do Community Day today at noon Eastern in just under an hour here at the channel. So we'll be hopping off and then coming back for some races. Spooo, Standard, as always, thanks for getting up early and doing this.
Appreciate you.
Hell yeah.
No problem.
And we'll do this again next week.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see
Bye.
you later, everybody.